Pakistan will become China's Afghanistan. Because unless they give money to Pakistan, Pakistan can't survive. If the Pakistan collapses, where do the nukes go? Now, coming to the question, how do you deal with the Pakistan in such conditions? We have to look beyond Pakistan. That is why they're coming to Gwadar. They want an access to the Indian Ocean to get out of that constriction. It's a heavy constriction.
Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Adi. I am honored and privileged to be once again joined by Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar. Out of his long career in the Indian Army, the Director General of the Artillery, today he's a strategic thinker and a writer of some very interesting blogs. I have had the opportunity to actually discuss the India and China standoff with him a couple of times, and I request you all to watch the video. We are here today to talk about Pakistan. I think that is one of our favorite subjects. All of us want to talk about it all the time. So thank you, sir, for joining us and helping us understand the current situation in Pakistan with the few questions that I prepared for you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for inviting me over, and I'm looking forward to it. And I must say, China has been a zone of no comfort for most of us. But whereas Pakistan traditionally is a comfort zone, everyone knows quite a lot about Pakistan. So, we can have an interesting discussion.
Absolutely.
And Pakistan is never dull. Yeah.
As
There's never a dull moment discussing Pakistan also.
Yeah. So broadly speaking, let's open out the discussion on a very broad subject. I want to ask you, what is your opinion about the Pakistan's main focus as far as India as a whole? Let's talk about it in a very broad context. What is they looking for from India?
Fundamentally, Pakistan is anything but India. Anything not India is Pakistan. That's their core ideology, right? The second thing, when you look at it, which comes about very strikingly, is the fact that they want to take the army as a whole, very definitely, and a large population want to take revenge against 1971. After all, we halved their nation at that point of time. And then they feel that Kashmir is their unfinished agenda of partition. And this stems from the fact that their water security is greatly threatened if Kashmir is in our hands. All right, so these are the 3-4 issues by fundamentally anti-India. Anything not India is Pakistan.
So it's basically ingrained in their blood. That's what you're...
Yes, it's ingrained. In fact, if you have a look at their writings in their articles and everything, it might be the most balanced article a chap has written, but you'll find that anti-India strain in it. And that is a bit of irrationality which creeps into the, discourse always.
So when you say that, is it right to say that the existence of Pakistan is basically anti-India as per se, just the entire existence of that country?
They have no other reason to exist. No history, no original culture, no nothing. After all, it was a non-existent country before this. There is always a tendency to compare it with Israel. But Israel had an idea of a Jewish homeland.
Yes.
Whereas there was never a idea of a separate state called Pakistan. Say maybe about even 5-6 years before the partition.
So coming to the latest today, what is your take on the so-called peace offering, which came first from the army chief, and then we can see in this sort of a, if I may use the same word, disengagement sort of a thing happening at the LOC as well?
Yeah, this is totally a tactical move, right? It is a fragile disengagement, if I might say, or a fragile peace, right? It has only value to the extent of trying to satisfy FATF and get some pressure off itself. We must understand the militancy in Pakistan has gone up. Then the number of insurgents movements or separatists, whatever you call it, has gone up, right? In Sindhu Desh, in Sindh, Balochistan has got problems. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has got problems. Gilgit Baltistan also they have issues, and within Punjab also these terror camps are flourishing.
Hmm.
So that's a bad situation. Afghanistan, things are going bad. So they have to find peace somewhere. So they're finding it with us. But this is only tactical. It's only temporary. The way I look at it.
Because this happened before in the 2003 agreement between both the countries as well, sir.
See, the 2003 agreement was slightly different. It was a culmination of a process.
Hmm.
It was a culmination of a process of Kargil operations, and, OPJ, Sharm el Sheikh, and various other things. And it was a precursor to the Musharraf plan. That ceasefire was again a process of a lot of track-to dialogues and a lot of interest between Pervez Musharraf and then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh to see the whole thing through, and even before that, Mr. Vajpayee. So that had a different texture altogether. This is just some back channel talk, and this thing. Let's get off each other's back. It's tactical both sides. I don't read much into it.
So coming again to the Pakistanis trying to do this tactically, as you're saying, would you trust their word when they say that let's maintain a ceasefire, knowing the fact that they basically are doing covering fire for infiltration? And the first levels of infiltration will start when the snow melts. So do you think this is going to last out for 3, 4, or 6 months? Or
Let us see the acid test of the ceasefire agreement, or revival of the 2003 ceasefire agreement will come up in summer when infiltration traditionally starts. So if they start firing and all, they have to. Otherwise, there's no way they can go ahead. So it'll come up then. So that we'll have to wait. And you can't trust the Pakistanis. I mean, no one can trust the Pakistanis. That's a proven fact. It's not just because we are India, we don't trust the Pakistanis. Americans don't trust the Pakistanis. And who trusts the Pakistanis? Maybe Chinese to some extent. That's it. No one. So you can't take them at their word. I'll leave it at that.
So you mentioned China, so I'm going to just take you over there. Is there any effect of the recent pushback by the Indians on the Chinese border, or I would say the LAC? Is there any effect of deterrence or any such thing that the Pakistanis have undergone because of this action taken by India?
Look, there'll be 2, 3 issues.
So
the Pakistanis always probably knew that China will not make much headway.
Okay.
That's my guess. Maybe a wild shot, but I am very confident, though they kept saying. Because in some readings and all, I've said, look, the Chinese are going to realize how tough Indians are. It's come out in vague form. And so now the thing is, Pakistan, hitherto always got beaten by us in any operation, right from 47 to Kargil and Balakot and all that. But now that we have pushed China back, it's going to be a ripple effect on Pakistan. Now they know that any conventional thing will go totally against them. And they also know the conditions under which we push China back. Because we have done that to them in Siachen and Vijay and all that. So I don't think Pakistan. I mean, Pakistan has no doubt about what's happened. And the chances of their going conventional are very low. And they're going, supporting terrorism and the Kashmir cause and all that is also down. They don't have money. And then Article 370 has harmed it politically. The FATF has put them on the back foot. So all issues and they've had to look inwards, which is very, for the first time in the past 25, 30 years, you're looking at a Pakistan which is looking inwards. It doesn't have time for you. They are in a survival mode. So that is, so I'm okay. Actually, think we've got a window of opportunity. We should make use of this window. I'm not talking of a peace dividend, mind you. It's not peace.
Hmm.
It's a window of opportunity for many things, to settle many issues,
So,
to put your own house in order. If you put your house in order, everything will flow.
would you mind elaborating on this a little bit? Any particular?
Yeah, when I say house, when you say put your own house in order, there are three issues in this. The first is you have to strengthen your military and build the infrastructure.
Hmm.
Both sides, against Pakistan and against
China.
all along. Yeah. So, and we have time. So to do it, a couple of years, so definitely we have, and more than that. So we should do that. That's the first thing.
Hmm.
Some we have started, some we will do, and and luckily because of this, face off with China, our preparations have got a boost. What otherwise would have been done in say 5, 6, 10 years has been done in 9 months. So we are on a okay perch there. That strengthening ourselves, we are on the right track. The second thing which we have to do is sort out internal issues in Kashmir. We've had some elections, grassroots elections, which have gone well, which is good. There's some revival of democracy, which is good. It's green shoots, early days. The militancy has gone down. All this business of stone throwing and all has vanished. A lot of links have been broken. Some revival has to be done further. You have to seriously look at granting statehood back and those things. Those political processes have to start, and let leadership of the valley and Kashmir and Jammu emerge as it should in the normal course of events, and so that there's some political normalcy sits in there. And that is the second bit. That means you have this opportunity to set Kashmir right the way you want,
as a state,
whichever way, as a state or as a people. A lot of things you can do. Good governance, all that will do. The third thing which we have to do is national political unity. Today, our ruling party and opposition is at loggerheads on every issue. I have no issue. We are a democracy. They should be at loggerheads with each other on domestic issues. They should contest elections. It doesn't matter me which party comes to power. One of them has to come into power. I have no issue. Whether it's a regional party or a national party, I have no problem. But on external issues, they have to be on one page. And that's been our history, mind you. When in 71, when we were going in for a war with Pakistan, Mr. Vajpayee came out and said, we will support and then Mrs. Indira Gandhi. Further, during Vijay also, the Congress fully supported BJP. So there was a political consensus on everything. Today, you don't find that. Like I said, you could be against each other internally, but externally, we need to develop political consensus. If we can do that, we can strengthen that thing. A lot of things will flow. So these three things: internal political strength, Kashmir, resolve. I wouldn't say resolve Kashmir issue, but strengthen the resolution what you are planning, and third, strengthen your armed forces.
I think these are three very important points, which are, and especially the second part of the Kashmir part of it. I think it makes a lot of sense. So, considering the fact that you said in the last talk that we had that the Chinese are going to take a couple of years to settle in read us, retrain themselves, and come back. The easiest way to harass India for the Chinese would be the Pakistanis. Post this so-called ceasefire agreement, that kind of surprised me because I would have wondered that the Chinese would have pushed Pakistan against India a little more and stood on the side and watched the show. It's going the opposite way around right now, temporarily, as you just said. Do you think there's going to be a situation where they're going to be pushing the Chinese further against India?
Yeah, the Chinese will attempt to push Pakistan against India. The Chinese have always used Pakistan as a cat's paw to hold India back politically, and they've been supplying them with arms and ammunition. They've supported Pakistan and the UN, especially in that Masood Azhar's case, not to declare him as a international terrorist and all that. They've been helping Pakistan get off the FATF and a lot of things. They will do so. I mean, we should not have any doubts about that. And there's also been a lot of collusion in terms of perception management and propaganda and all coming out, psyops coming out together from Pakistan and China in the past 8-9 months. So that's on. That will be on. Whether Pakistan can be pushed to a level to hike up issues in Kashmir and all that is a bit difficult to imagine at this point of time through China. Why? China has its own issues. If China wants to stoke fires in Kashmir, we can stoke fires in Tibet and Xinjiang and Hong Kong. As it is, Hong Kong, they're having problems. Things are not easy.
Yes, sir.
Right? So there are issues, we can handle it. And also, of course, Taiwan is also there. If you stoke up Taiwan, things will go worse. Sure. So we have handles, which so far we have not really used. We've just shown them. So I don't know whether China will take that chance beyond a point. The second thing is Pakistan today doesn't have the capability to do so. Like I said, it's internal problems are more. This PDM, right, People's Democracy Movement, where all these other parties have come and are against Imran Khan, and for the first time, the PDM has questioned the armed forces.
Yes.
Right? So there is a problem there. And plus this other things which I spoke to you about, militancy and insurgency and all that is a problem. That CPEC is not going great. Whether leave the perception management out of it and the propaganda that it's going to change Pakistan's fortunes, it will change Pakistan's fortunes for the worse. On that, there's no doubt. And then they don't have money. They just don't have. Zero. We are tremendous debt. They have no water. So pollution is going up. And so I don't think Pakistan is in any position. So as much as China would like to use Pakistan as cat's paw against us, efficacy will be low. Like I said, again, it adds to that the window of opportunity we have. This will last a couple of years, 2-3 years, and this we should not let go.
The window of opportunity sounds like a very, very interesting preposition for the country of India, as per se, because just to get, it's our head that we are talking about, which is in the north. So it does create trouble. So we've all heard about this word and we discuss it very freely in our conversations about Pakistan called the deep state. We've all heard this phrase very often. Some people say it's the army, some people say it's the ISI. There are many opinions. I'd like to know yours. And second part of this question is, how do you think they actually operate?
The deep state is not one particular entity. The official face of the deep state is the chief of the army staff and the corps commanders. So the corps commanders conference form the backbone of the deep state. Now this is reinforced by the ISI and its infiltration in ISI basically, and it's infiltrated into all walks of of Pakistani life. The third aspect of this deep state is that many army officers are today holding important appointments is in the government of Pakistan,
Hmm.
right? Then there's an elite who wants the army to continue, who wants to make, they want their survival is dependent on the survival of the state of Pakistan with the army at the help. Then there are a whole lot of senior bureaucrats and um, external affairs guys who are also influential people whose survival is dependent on Pakistan surviving the way it is. And those guys are staunch supporters. They are all the opinion makers and things like that of the deep state.
Mm-hmm.
So the deep state is not one single entity, in my opinion. The core is the army with the corps commanders and seconded and aided and abetted by the ISI fully. Because the ISI is almost the sword arm of the Pakistan army. And then, the senior bureaucrats and foreign affairs chaps and all who are pro this story. And of course, the ex-army people and the ex-armed forces people who are in the government of Pakistan. All this forms the deep state. There is no this thing. And of course, they will never allow any peace to prevail between India and Pakistan, because the survival of Pakistan as an army with a country depends on the success of the deep state ensuring it is so. Right? So that answers this thing. What is the second part of that question?
How do they control? I mean, see, because
they have they have control. They control it through the ISI. They control it through the bureaucrats who are part of this coterie. Then the co-commanders, and ultimately it's a chief of the army staff. It is. Then they have their, I wouldn't say their common minimum agenda, and their common minimum agenda is anything India, anti-India, as simple as that. So it's very simple. It's a survival. If the deep state collapses, Pakistan collapses tomorrow. It is only the deep state, and I would say that part of the deep state is the huge business empire of the Pakistanis.
That's what I want to know. So the assets are pretty huge. They run a separate economy.
They have their own economy, so the deep state is funded, right? So that is how they can enforce so many things. So their survival and is fine, and they keep milking the state. They keep milking the government. So they'll survive and they'll do what they have to do.
So are you trying?
And the government has to survive on them. The survival of any government is dependent on the deep state.
Pardon my previous intrusion, sir, but are you trying to tell me that the deep state is basically some sort of a democratic, I mean, not in the literal sense of it, body that gets together and decides where the country is going in terms of its anti-India rhetoric?
I don't think there's any democracy there. There's a unanimity of anti-India rhetoric out there. Right. So that unanimity forces them to adopt that, and they'll not change.
Yeah.
For anything else, they'll change, but not. Again, their survival is anti-India. So everything is on anti-India. So if they start accepting peace with India, they'll collapse. Tomorrow, if there is peace with India and Pakistan, just think take this argument further. If they'll be out of a job. They'll collapse. And the moment they collapse, the country will collapse.
Split.
So they will never, there's no democracy. It is survival.
So it's a
survival is their mantra, and democracy.
So, with regards to FATF, you mentioned that a while ago when we were talking about the Chinese helping the Pakistanis in the FATF list. They're still on the grey list and they're proud to be there. it was quite funny to see the Pakistanis celebrating the fact that they are still in the blacklist, and India could not put them on this. They were on the grey list, and the Indians could
Yeah,
not put them on the blacklist. So there
yeah,
was
I
a huge
agree.
online celebration that happened. My question is this a conscious effort by Pakistan to actually do something for once in their existence, or it's just an eyewash that one fine day the world will find you know find hard to believe that they fell for it again?
Oh, first and foremost, it's a very funny country where you are put on a grey list and you celebrate. You know, and it's been so from 2018 to now, 3 years, 4 years. They're happy to be in the grey list,
Yes.
right? So that's the thing. And look, let's be very frank. Their survival of the deep state and the Pakistan army and the overbearing, importance it has on the entire structure is based on all extraneous factors which go against what the FATF wants, right? So, I mean, which they will never do it. Look at it this way. See what happened in the Daniel Pearl's case. When the
Hmm.
pressure was on, he was imprisoned, all this nonsense happened. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years down the line, he's let go scot free. Okay, so they'll do this nautanki all the way through. Let's be very clear.
Hmm.
FATF is they just want to get off the FATF list, and why? Because they otherwise they will not get money, they'll not get loans, nothing, and that's the fundamental thing. They want to get the money. If they don't get money, FATF or no FATF doesn't matter. And at some point of time, my guess is FATF is also relent. Because unless they give money to Pakistan, Pakistan can't survive. If the Pakistan collapses, where do the nukes go?
That's a big question.
That's a big question. So they will relent. They will, this is like drip irrigation.
Hmm.
You keep giving something or the other to Pakistan to keep it in hope, and Pakistan also gives something back to in a drip irrigated form to FATF,
Hmm.
and with China giving it backing. So this will continue. This tamasha will continue. Nothing serious about it.
So coming to the first part of the talk, with regards to Pakistan's focus towards India, does I'll use this phrase myself, that deep state now realize that the Kashmir issue is now going to be a passe because there is peace over there, apart from what the naysayers say. We all know it. People have been there, seen it. The people themselves are pretty happy to be in a situation that they are in. There are obviously exceptions, but does the Pakistani deep state now think that the Kashmir is a lost cause? And is that the reason why the K word, which is the Khalistan, is being propped up?
To a extent, right. See, they'll never give up hope on Kashmir. They'll never give up their activities there. But they also realize that's a waning proposition. To keep India off balance, they have to do something else. So that is why they're reviving the Khalistani movement.
Mm-hmm.
And the very reason, if you read some of their newspapers, when this Kartarpur corridor was opened, it was touted as a victory for them. That now Khalistan movement will revive. Okay, and this is one of the best moves done by the chief General Bajwa. So, and if you again go back in history, there was a time when Punjab was in trouble with the Khalistan movement and all that, and Kashmir was relatively quiet at that time. Though things had started, it was relatively quiet. The insurgency was it was incipient. As Punjab started waning, Kashmir started increasing. So we could just see a reversal of that, right? But again, that is one way of looking at it. But I don't think they'll get much foothold in Punjab. I don't think people in Punjab are any way going to support Khalistan. all my friends from there feel very offended when you tell them
Mm.
Khalistan is getting back. They say no, it will not get back. So
Absolutely.
I have a lot of faith in the people of Punjab,
Mm.
and they will not let this Khalistan business come up again.
Mm.
So we gotta
That's
have, like I said again, part of this is part of that window of opportunity.
mm.
Next 2-3 years, things are going to be shifty. So it is this time you make it, or we go back to the old story.
Mm. Having disbalance.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I agree with you. With the amount of Sikhs today coming out and
yeah,
making their own channels and their own videos and putting it all over
yeah,
the place, Jai Hind and this and that, there is a bit of an offense that they've taken. Yeah, this is not okay. Whatever
yeah. I
happens.
agree with you. No, in fact, if you look back, militancy in Punjab went out because of the people of Punjab.
Yes, sir.
It didn't go out because of the army, police, and all that. If the
Absolutely.
people
Absolutely.
didn't want it, it went out.
Mm.
People still don't want it, it will not come back. But Pakistan will try. I mean, you can't stop Pakistan from trying. They might be unsuccessful, that's a different story, but they'll try.
Right. So you mentioned about the nuclear weapons. That is something I think that has kept us back quite quite many a times with regards to this thing. And I'm quite happy, and I'm not saying that I'm a pro BJP or anything. But this time, when we hit back to Pakistan, keeping those nuclear bluff on the side, it was very good. Is Pakistan still together because of its nuclear weapons? You hinted on this in the previous answer. And do you fear an indiscriminate use of these weapons by some maniac who might just get his hands on the button?
See, one thing we should be clear about the Pakistani nuclear weapons. Pakistan might, show a lot of irrationality to everyone about the nuclear weapons. But there is nothing irrational of what Pakistan is doing with its nuclear weapons. It's a very rational method they're adopting from their point of view.
Hmm.
And those nukes are not going to get into anyone's hands. Survival of the deep state depends on the keeping nukes away from everyone. Okay, if the nukes go into the hands of terrorists or big players, and it is used, their own survival is at stake. They got finished. So I have no problem of these nukes going into someone's hands. No, it will never happen. That's their source of being in power. Okay, they can use it to threaten others. It will be a coordinated action. All that is fine, right? But having said that, if anything, the last decade, whether it's Balakot, surgical strikes, Vijay, Eastern Ladakh, or Doklam, after all, we are three nuclear states,
Hmm.
and we've gone to war or conflict or whatever till a threshold. The uh, in this entire past 9 months, we've never heard this word of nuclear
Hmm.
story coming up
Hmm.
between China and India. That never came. There was a conscious effort on both sides to keep the story down beyond the nuclear threshold. Same thing with Pakistan. They'll threaten, but they'll do nothing. And that got busted at first the cross LOC strikes of 2016
Hmm.
and Balakot. They'll not use it. And so the chances of anything happening nuclear are remote.
Hmm.
And I don't expect a rogue guy to bloody come out with a suitcase nuclear bomb and setting it off somewhere. That will be the end of the deep state.
Hmm.
They'll finished. After that, what? You know, the the case is very simple. If I put it, the implied threat is greater than the applied threat. Once a threat is applied, it is no more a threat. So, since till such time they can imply the threat, they will be in power. or they'll get their way ahead.
That's a very interesting way to look at it, sir. I think, and it makes a lot of sense because there is always that. I would say a lot of people who took decisions with regards to the response to the Pakistanis, I think they've always had that gun on their temple.
That will continue. I mean, right? Only thing is, with time, we know that gun on the temple is not loaded. One. Number two is people say, okay, you have a gun on the temple, shoot yourself, carry on. We'll see what happens. And he's not prepared to do it. He projects irrationality, but he is not irrational by any stretch of imagination. He's got his clear red lines. He's got his everything going. It's not as if they're fools. Right? And it is domestic in nature. They have to continue in power.
The next 2-3 years, in my opinion, till the time they're in the grey list and they come out or stay in the grey list, and the current economic situation in Pakistan are pretty critical. And the current economic situation in India, where we see some sort of a rise, are going to be very critical. We're going to be getting a lot of strength. How do you think we should deal with Pakistan in not a localized manner? I think we've been dealing with them ever since pretty well, but in an international front, what would you like to see happening?
See, let me put it this way. Today, everyone knows what Pakistan is. You don't have to, tell USA do this, do that, or anyone. Everyone knows what Pakistan is, and everyone knows how to deal with it also. So even if USA comes back into this region, it has to come back, right? They're not going to give Pakistan a loose rope like before. Then China also will not give Pakistan a loose rope beyond a point, because if Pakistan goes down, their interests go down very badly. You must remember, a major interest today of China is to be a superpower. To be a superpower, it has to reach 2 oceans. If anyone who knows the geography and the maritime geography of South China Sea, East China Sea, and the LOC, you should know that they don't have an open access to the Pacific.
Correct, sir.
Right? It is not only Malacca Straits. If you go further, the South China Sea, the Mindanao Straits, the Taiwan, the first chain of islands, second chain of islands, they constrict China. Right? So that is why they're coming to Gwadar. They want an access to the Indian Ocean to get out of that constriction. It's a heavy constriction. Okay. So if anything goes wrong in Pakistan tomorrow, Chinese superpower dreams are gone. You think China will allow Pakistan to go beyond a point? So that's not there. So you have Chinese interests, you have American interests back. Then the Middle East will not allow all this to happen because their interests are at stake if Pakistan goes down tomorrow. Their balance of power between, the Shias and Sunnis is an issue. There are a lot of factors. We have to, and we are a rising power. I mean, whether you like it or not, we are a rising power. I mean, we can criticize ourselves, fool ourselves and all that, but we are a rising power. We can't just take ourselves easily. Now, coming to the question, how do you deal with Pakistan in such conditions? We have to look beyond Pakistan. Our obsession of one generation before us of Pakistan should go. And if I suspect, there are a lot of people from the north who give too much undue importance to Pakistan. Right? So we have to look at that. And the second thing is, our comprehensive national power is growing. Right? We need to use that more to sort out Pakistan than just thinking of sorting out Pakistan militarily. We don't have to touch it. Right. The next part is, Pakistan can't revive. I mean, it just can't revive because its population is burgeoning. They have problems of a lot of social problems. They don't have water. Their agriculture is going for a toss.
Yes.
I mean, just think, you see, their main crops are rice and wheat, and Indus is their single source water. Because there's reduced water flow in Indus, saline water has come up into their rice bowls.
Yes.
So agriculture is going down day by day. For the first time in the past few years, they have imported food and cotton, which they have always exported, both these.
Correct.
Right? Their agriculture is short, which is their fundamental. No one wants to invest in Pakistan. They're nothing. So they can't revive. How will they revive? And they're in such a debt trap that they can't repay. So I don't see this revival happening, this thing. And on the other hand, you are without doubt the fastest growing economy in the world. I mean, we don't have time to go into the Chinese economy. The Chinese economy is not going to bloody boom off. It has got its own issues. At some point, there are very huge limiting factors. So, with that outlook, we should have our focus on China. Pakistan will be there, let it be there. We'll handle it.
So, Balochistan is a pretty interesting subject. I personally don't feel that there is going to be any separation or creation of a country in Balochistan from the time the Chinese corridor goes to that place. When I say this, I do get a lot of backlash from a lot of nationalists who want to separate it out. But I personally feel there is nothing. What is your opinion?
See, Pakistan will always continue in this fissiparous state. The problem with Balochistan, why it can never become independent, is the population. The population isn't that much. It's a huge area with low population,
very low,
exploited, and the army has full control over it. It's not now; it's from long. So the viability of Balochistan becoming a separate state will depend on a whole lot of other things. Yes, if it joins with Sindh, it might become. And for the political situation to go very bad in Pakistan, which means the army has to be completely out of the equation. Only then will Pakistan collapse. Army will never let Pakistan collapse because their survival depends on the survival of Pakistan.
Yes.
After all, it's an army with a country.
Yes.
How can it let that country divide and then remain an army? They'll never let it happen. Will it go up? It will never go up. Why it will not go up? No military government has the capability of driving its economy up. It's a fundamental thing.
Correct.
That military man is not an economist. I'm not an economist who can set things right. I can, destroy other things and everything. I can destroy the economy. That's what they've done. So it will continue in this nebulous state, neither up nor down. Failed, perpetually failing, perpetually all that with all their problems. They'll keep changing. Today Imran Khan, tomorrow someone will come, some other third chap will come, fourth chap will come, they'll prop a guy. They'll have a government to run the show. But it'll never break up. And that's good. In a way, let it continue like that.
That's what I personally feel, sir, because at the end of it, one of the reasons that I say so is now that the Chinese are in there, they won't let it break up.
Yeah, it's not only Chinese. Someone has to prop it up. Even if it has to come there has to be some reason. There's no reason at this point of time now. Maybe down the line something else might happen. We don't know.
So one of the latest
Balochistan alone, no. Yeah, sorry.
One of the latest things that the Pakistanis are trying to do is get their foothold into Afghanistan. And we all know the reason why, because we have our interests over there as well. And apart from the fact they want a buffer state or whatever their deep state comes up with. What do you think should be the plan for India and Afghanistan, knowing the fact, one, that the Americans are threatening to come out? I don't think that will happen. But if they do or if they don't, is there time for the Indian boots to be on the ground in Afghanistan?
Indian boots need not go there, and that's a different story. First and foremost, let's talk of Pakistan, Afghanistan. Pakistan always has felt that Afghanistan will give it strategic depth. That was the theory of. But today, what is happening is that they feel Afghanistan will pose problems to Pakistan. I mean, it's very funny. You have built a fence, LOC fence and the border fence with Pakistan. Pakistan is building a fence with Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So they don't want now. There's a very clear thing that any problem in Afghanistan will touch their Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Baluchistan,
Yes, sir.
and their entire Durand line politics will come in. So they are very careful about it now. They are very conscious, and terrorism will come and everything. In the moment that happens, if the army gets diverted, their existential problem with India comes to the fore. So I don't think we don't have to do anything. The situation is so bad there economically, and if the Americans leave, and it will go back. If it goes back to the pre-85 days or 90 days, 85, 90 days or something like that, or the last century, Afghanistan will be in a mess.
Yes.
And Pakistan this time will be in a worse mess. And if you think China is going to go and control it, it will not happen. Because the Chinese don't know how to control these situations. It's okay to control people within your own territory. How do you do it outside? And the moment the Chinese get involved, that means they're actually, in a way, I think Pakistan will become China's Afghanistan as days go by.
I heard that somewhere before, sir, and I've always wondered if that was a possibility.
Yeah, in my way of thinking, that's a very high possibility. Already, China is so invested in Pakistan. They are trying to build bases there. Now, the moment you build bases, and that's coming under attack. The moment they're coming under attack, you're putting fences and all that, for which the people are going against. Don't you see a similarity between what's happened with U.S. forces in Afghanistan and Chinese forces in Pakistan?
Yes.
The Chinese U.S. forces, wherever they were heavily fortified, fenced, and stuck to that. Sooner or later, it will start happening in Pakistan of Chinese forces, if at all China puts boots on ground.
Do you think that is going to happen?
I mean, that Gwadar, yes. Unless Gwadar is developed as a naval base, China will never be a superpower. And if you're going to have base in Gwadar, the terrorists and everything will come in. Already they're gunning for Chinese engineers and this and that and all that. If the Chinese army men and PLA people come there, they'll also become targeted. Right? Or unless they're in that one little island of theirs and not coming out, all that. But then how will they reach the ocean from Xinjiang? It has to come through the CPEC. So it'll happen. I mean, I am very confident that China has entered, Pakistan is China's Afghanistan. It might not happen this decade, it will happen the next decade.
So it's basically the repeat of the story of a superpower trying to overextend itself.
Yeah, that is apparent. I mean, every superpower, that's the history of the world. A power rises. As it rises, it starts expanding. As it starts expanding, it has to defend itself. As it has to defend itself, it arms itself. And as it arms itself, it gets into wars. As it gets into wars, it will start debilitating itself and collapse. That's a history.
But I hope that doesn't happen to us.
Look, we are not an outgoing nation for that to happen. So we are never going to be a super. I mean, let's be very clear. We are never going to be a superpower. It might happen in some next century, that I don't know, if at all. But I don't think we are on that path. And Indians don't have this mentality of going out. Right? Yeah, maybe thousands of years back we did it when we went into Cambodia and those areas, but not anymore.
So I think this has been really wonderful. But I have a last question, and this is I think an emotional prick for all of us.
Okay.
Aksai Chin is one thing that I think 90% of the general populace would not understand very clearly, and they don't associate it with it the way people who know about the subject do. But POK, or the area illegally occupied by Kashmir, and that is one thing which is brought about all the time, no matter the Chinese involvement over there as well. But we are very hard bent on getting that place back. People very rarely say that we should get Aksai Chin back. Only when the Chinese kind of pushed us around, we said, "Oh, Aksai Chin, we should get back," and stuff like that. There is a call for the return of POK. We've got our seats empty in our parliament for that segment of population. The Chinese are there in full strength. Do you see any time in the future where something is possible to recover that land?
Yeah, look, what you said is right. We've done all this. But for us to recover POK or the Pak occupied Kashmir part or the Gilgit Baltistan, both, needs a lot of fundamental non-military actions.
Okay, sir.
The first step for that is political unity and political will. What Article 370 has done, all in one stroke, it neutered the Pakistan army, it neutered Pakistani political aspirations and all that, and kept everything to one side. That political action, that is important. And they couldn't react to it, and that's how. And we declared it our land, and we did what we wanted, and everything else is QED. Similarly, if you want those areas, political unity is a must here. Right. And then you have to start taking political actions. Hey, there's no point in saying, no, China shouldn't do this, or Pakistanis are doing this. Stop cribbing. That's not, there are minor things, but there are a lot of political, in fact, I've written on it.
Yes, sir.
I've written an article on how to take back Gilgit Baltistan and POK. Both need different methodologies because the areas are different and the end points are different for each. So you need political action, you need social action, you need investment, you need a roadmap. How you're going to do that? Certain things you've done, like cartographically, you put out a map, then you put out stamps, commemorative stamps, and all that. Yeah, that's great. That's part of the story. But the larger story is politically, you have to reach out to those people and say, this is it, join. So, whatever the movement there, those people have to say, we want to join India first. Then there's a practicality. When the practicality is something which, that's why you need political unity. What is the practicality? Practicality is, are you prepared to take 4 million more Muslims into your fold? First. Right? That needs political this thing. And secondly, we are looking at a set of people who are socially backward, who are, they're indicators. When I say socially backward, they're indicators. Economically backward, everything. So you need a lot of investment.
Indoctrinated.
A lot of them are indoctrinated. So are you prepared to invest in their upliftment? What are the promises you're going to give them? How will you get them into the Indian mainstream? As and when they're saying, right? So you have a lot of ground to cover.
Yes, sir.
And that needs political wisdom, one, unity, and will. Do I see it in the horizon? Besides political rhetoric, some solid movement? I don't.
Correct.
There might be an intent, but this needs discussion, public discourse. You need a lot of articles coming up and a lot of thought coming out, and people saying this is the way you should do it, this is not the way you should do it. We can discuss.
Yes, sir.
But that discussion is today, no, hum lenge. You don't get that just a
That's
lenge.
it.
You have to do a lot of things for that.
Personally,
I
sir,
think
I look at it in a very simple way. We've already made a fence. You know, those people have never been a part of this country. They don't know what this is all about. Pakistanis have tried hard, and it is an open fact that there is not a single soul that you can find in Kashmir who actually speaks Kashmiri in
yeah, they're all Punjabis.
yeah.
See, there are two things. One in the lower reaches, the part adjacent to Kashmir
Hmm.
and the valley, and that part, Rajouri, that belt from Punch downward, south of Hajipir.
Yes, yes,
A lot of people, they're no more original Kashmiris. They're all gone, and it is Punjabized,
yes.
right? So that lot will think differently altogether.
Correct, sir.
If you go to Gilgit-Baltistan, the people of Gilgit-Baltistan have always sought statehood from Pakistan.
Correct.
They have sought statehood, and that is being given now.
Hmm.
They're not saying we want to leave Pakistan. They say no, we don't want. We want to be a proper province of Pakistan. How do you resolve that? You have to change the mood from today seeking provinciality from Pakistan to statehood as part of uh, Kashmir. That needs political thing. Rest, everything will fall in place.
Correct, sir. I agree with you. And secondly, since the population has completely changed, what you're looking for is piece of land. What do you do with the people once they're there? I mean,
Yeah, I told you 4 million people.
yeah,
You have to you have to understand the people problem there.
I mean, to be very simple and I think as a talk as a layman, how do you teach them your national anthem?
But no. But I look at it another way. If that comes about, then the Kashmir problem is solved forever.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
See, everything comes back to that one fundamental thing:
Absolutely.
political will,
Hmm.
political unity, political plan, and then the rest everything will fall into place.
So I think this has been a wonderful discussion about Pakistan. Keeping the rhetoric apart, I think most of the discussions when you see, this is my personal view, and I've seen some very, very senior people, not to disrespect them, but when they talk, it comes back to that rhetoric, that Pakistan, 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 everybody starts grinding their teeth. I think this discussion has been off that rhetoric, and I'm thankful to you to keep
Thank you.
that way. It will be a refreshing change for people to actually listen to some sense in this whole subject, apart from the regular rhetoric, hum lenge, hum jeetenge. Yeah, we've kind of won. We don't have to rub it in on our own faces all the time. I think it's time that we talk sense. And I think this discussion, I've never seen something like this. I don't know. I've read some of your articles, and that's one of the reasons why I pushed you that I'd like to talk to you about Pakistan, because I found the view to be very balanced. I found the view to be very a realistic view. And I think as Indians, we need to be that. Would you agree with me, sir?
Yeah. We have to be realpolitik. We have enough problems of our own. Let's solve them.
Yes, rather than going and
rather than trying to do taking additional problems on.
I don't think anybody in India wants to be a United States who.
Yeah, and like we have our own problems of internal divisions, internal problems.
Right.
We are a country where every 30 kilometers the language changes, the dialect changes, the religions change. So we have our own issues. Let's get to that first.
Yes.
Before we start going out and doing things which are beyond us. At this point of time, maybe down the line, when there is better political wisdom and unity, things can change. No harm.
I think for the next
keep the window open.
Sir, never shut that, obviously.
Never shut that, but that's not your focus today.
I would say for the next 20 years, we look in, make ourselves super strong and then start with.
On this issue, but we overall in a geopolitical issue, India has to start looking outward.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
A different story.
But this internal strengthening that you mentioned, the army, the infrastructure, strengthening up Kashmir, and
economy.
the
or
economy.
economy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah,
that
these are
that's a
things
very
which
realistic way of looking at things, and I thank you for taking that discussion on that particular aspect. I think that's what I was looking for from this discussion. So thank you so much once again for joining me,
welcome,
and
welcome
I'm sure this is going to
anytime.
be very well received by a lot of people.
Yeah, I enjoyed discussing with you. Thank you, Adi.
Thank you, sir. Jai Hind.
And thanks to all the viewers for patiently listening to all this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.